Namaste to everybody. This tree has these yellow flowers. It's shed already most of its green leaves, but it has the yellow flowers. It does this. So it's like a nice little carpet of yellowish, of the yellow flowers from the tree. I don't know what the name of it is. And this is the place that I'm looking at as a place where I can just meditate, sit down. So just go into it. Right now I'm not going to sit on it because it rained last night. But it's a nice, like the Buddha or the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, where they have sat on the trees, big banyan trees or bodhi trees. And she's taking a piss. So let's talk about when I began my spiritual journey. When, like, about that. Maybe it'll help you guys out. This is in 4K now. I got the hang of it from the GoPro to the phone and then up to the YouTube channel all the way through. And not losing the 4K quality, as I did a couple of mistakes because I didn't know how this was working since I'm not using my computer anymore. My Rudraksha and Batman. I'm a little batsy. So I started to feel the spiritual inclination, like the pull towards living a more, starting to live a spiritual life, like the spiritual awakening, around 33, when I was 33 years old, or when I turned 33, something like that. And I started to study the teachings of Jesus Christ. I have talked about this once, twice, or 3 times before during this 4 years on YouTube, these 4 years. And I did the research on the internet in those days. When I was 33, now I'm 52. That was 19 years ago, going on 20 years ago. And yeah, it was beautiful. I don't know how true the teachings are, if it is what he actually taught, because things get lost along the way in terms of translation, and even just going from what he said to people that heard it, and then those people telling other people about it, and then some people writing it down. As I remember the studies, like 80 years later, 70, 60 years later after his passing, some people started to write it down, gathering the teachings, the verbal teachings that people were just passing on to others. And then I started to become interested in Buddhism and the Buddha. And I remember hearing about and seeing a few movies where they had talked about the Buddha a little bit, but never a movie about Buddhism or with the Buddha in it. Siddhartha Gautama, and there have been other Buddhas. He's not the only Buddha that has been around or the only one that will ever have come. There are more already here, but they don't go, say, hey, I'm a Buddha, I'm enlightened. So, yeah, I started researching a little bit about Buddhism, and I started to just do the pranayams, the breathing technique, which was the simplest thing I could understand at that time. My mind could not grasp it. I was not ready to grasp more, just that. So I started doing the breathing techniques, very simple ones, in the forest in Llano Grande when I lived in Rio Negro in a country house that I was paying rent for. And with my 3 doggies, I went to this one place. I was really secluded because I remember their recommendation was go and find a secluded place, away from people, away from the noise, away from everything. And I lived out in the countryside in that area at that time. There were very few people living out there. So very little interference in terms of human noise and vehicles and whatever. So it was nice. I had my first conscious OBE that I induced myself, out of body experience. Before they were more like things that happened without me inducing them. OBEs, out of body experiences. So then I kept on going, and then the Bhagavad Gita, as it is, and a translation by Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, the sannyasi from India that went to the US and took Hinduism in that form successfully there. You guys know the story. If you haven't, just look up ISKCON or whatever. So I started reading the Bhagavad Gita, where it's Krishna, one of the forms that people in India worship as a form of God. It's not the only one, because nobody can tell you this is the form of God and that's it, and that isn't. There are no limitations to whatever it is, etc. in spiritual life, on the spiritual level and everything. So Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna is talking to Arjuna his best friend, and they're best friends. Arjun is a soldier and a warrior, and he's leading the battle against the Kauravas, their cousins, who are doing everything wrong in the book, especially with what was the principal one? And Yudhishthir was the leader of the whole family, but on the battlefield it was Arjun kind of like leading the battle in a sense, even though Yudhishthir was the king. So spiritual teachings in that book, even though most of it is just about material life and all these afflictions and stuff and family quarrels and all that stuff, but there are some spiritual teachings in there. It comes from the Mahabharata, the epic tale, the bigger picture, the bigger thing about the whole stuff. And I started reading the Bhagavad Gita, and I was really interested in the teachings they had about spiritual life and everything, but I couldn't understand much of it. My mind was not ready to understand much, but I was getting a little few things. And then I met the Hare Krishnas in Medellin when I went to a yoga center there that they have, and I wanted to do yoga. You know, hot yoga. Yoga is integral. I'll talk about that in another video. And I wanted to do hot yoga, the one with the postures, you know, with the physical positions of the body and all of that. So I started doing that with them, and then the instructor, he was a Hare Krishna, a Bhakti yogi. So at the end of each session of yoga, I paid for once a week, and he would talk about, or twice a week, I would go there for the physical part, and then he would talk about the Bhagavad Gita, and I would stay, and then he would ask questions. Anybody have any questions? And I would ask him the questions I had, all the questions I had about the Bhagavad Gita and whatever. And then he talked to me after a few months, seeing that I was very interested in spiritual life. I was more serious than others, a lot more. And he asked me if I wanted to get initiated. I didn't know what that was. Initiation and guru. I had only heard about business gurus, the word guru thrown around in New York and the US before coming to Colombia. You know, business gurus, the gurus about marketing and whatever, but not the spiritual gurus. So I did the research and everything, and I was very skeptical. I was a very skeptical person, still am. I don't really follow people or anything they say. I just look at what is being said and see if there is any ounce of truth in it. If I can connect with that, resonate with that, if that resonates with me. Well, I'm finishing up this part, so it's going to be part 2, because I'm doing this in 4K, and then at 8 minutes and 20 seconds or whatever, it cuts off, and I don't want it to be short. So we'll be back for part 2 to continue on there about my initiation process with the Bhakti yogis, the Hare Krishnas. So see you in the next video. Stay tuned for that. It's going to be more spiritual things and spiritual stories from here on out in general.